Again, my name is Kaylee, and I'm incredibly excited to have you here with me today for the Stewardship and Action portion of your field trip. For today's lesson, we're going to be using something we like to refer to as the super awesome Watershed Model. But what is a watershed, and why is it important? The term watershed refers to an area of land that channels snowmelt and rainfall to creeks, streams, and rivers, and eventually to an outflow, such as groundwater, a bay, or the ocean. As residents of Marysville, you all live in the Snohomish watershed. Covering an area of 1,800 square miles, the Snohomish watershed is the second largest basin draining into Puget Sound. The Snohomish watershed starts with the Skykomish and Snoqualmie rivers, which originate in the Cascade Mountains. These rivers flow along independently until they join near the city of Monroe to form the Snohomish River. As the Snohomish, this river then flows into the estuary near the city of Snohomish and finally joins Puget Sound between the cities of Everett and Marysville. That's an awfully long way for all that water to travel, and in fact, it's nearly 3,000 miles total in stream length. But what does all of this have to do with stewardship and action? In order to answer that question, we're going to use that super awesome watershed model that I mentioned before to demonstrate how each of our seemingly small everyday actions can add up to a big impact.
So this is the super awesome watershed model. Notice it looks a lot like your community in and around Marysville. We have a mountainous, forested area, residential neighborhoods, a shopping center and parking lot, golf course, factory, a farm, a marina, and an estuary or wetland. Now what we're going to do is use a variety of things you might find in your pantry at home, sprinkles, Kool-Aid mix, cocoa powder, and use them to represent the many pollutants that can, and too often do, enter our waterways. Then we're going to make it rain and see how all of those pollutants move through our watershed. We're going to begin in our mountainous forest, where much of our supply of wood and paper comes from. Unfortunately, sometimes the logging industry uses a method called clear cutting, which is when all of the trees in an area are cut down at once. This leaves the soil exposed and can lead to erosion. Erosion is when exposed soil is blown or washed away. For our purposes today, we're using cocoa powder to represent this. Erosion is particularly harmful to our waterways and salmon because it causes turbidity. Remember from the water quality lesson that turbid water makes our waterways warmer, can cover up fish eggs, and make it harder for salmon to breathe. Next, we're going to use this bottle of oil and sludge, which is really just chocolate syrup, to represent what can happen when industry, like this factory, doesn't practice the principles of environmental stewardship and ignores environmental protection regulations. We're also going to pour a bit of oil onto our roadways and parking areas to represent spills from cars and boats. Whatever collects on our roadways eventually runs off into stormwater drains, which do not lead to a treatment plant, but rather directly into our creeks, rivers, and eventually the Puget Sound. Another common source of pollution is pesticides. Used by farmers and home gardeners alike, pesticides are toxic chemicals designed to prevent certain weeds or bugs from destroying crops. The problem is that once these pesticides are introduced into the environment, they can prove extremely harmful to plants, animals, and even humans. But don't worry, the pesticides we're using on our model today, it's just cherry Kool-Aid. Fertilizers are another type of chemical commonly applied to farmland, gardens, and lawns. Fertilizers contain a special mix of nutrients that help plants grow quicker and bigger. While that sounds great for your flower bed, too many nutrients, like phosphates, remember those from the water quality lesson, can cause aquatic plants and algae to grow out of control. Another pollutant that can have this effect is animal waste. Today, we're going to be using chocolate sprinkles to represent animal waste that isn't being managed properly. Remember that growth spurts brought on by an excess of nutrients are often referred to as algal blooms. Algal blooms block the light that is needed for other plants to grow, causing those plants to die and then break down or decay. In the process of decay, much of the oxygen in the water is used up by bacteria and other decomposers, causing low levels of dissolved oxygen. This, in turn, can kill salmon and other aquatic animals. Yet another way excess nutrients enter our waterways is through soap, which often contain phosphates. Now we're ready to make it rain and see exactly how all of these pollutants move throughout our watershed. So without further ado, so what does our stormwater runoff look like? Blah! Not very good. Look at how discolored and dark this water is. If I was a salmon, I don't think I'd be very happy and healthy living in water as polluted as this. So let's try to do better now that we know better. This time around, we're going to put stewardship in action. Let's see just how much we can positively impact the stormwater runoff and water quality of our watershed. Again, we're going to start in our mountain forest with logging. After all, we all still need wood and paper. But this time, we're going to use sustainable forestry practices. No clear cutting here. Also, we're going to plant new trees in order to replace the ones we cut down and allow them to grow big and tall before we come back to harvest. Some erosion will likely still occur, but it will be far less than we saw last time. Planting trees isn't just a job for the foresters. We can encourage our entire community to help with habitat restoration. Planting native trees and shrubs provides food and shelter to wildlife, keeps our waterways shaded and cool, and prevents erosion, keeping water clear. Mother Nature is an accomplished architect. Wetlands, estuaries, and an abundance of pervious surfaces, or those that allow rainwater to trickle through to the ground below, are all critical elements of a healthy watershed. These types of habitats and surfaces provide critical filtration services and can almost be thought of as natural sponges. In this version of the model, we're going to be the type of community that works to protect and restore these habitats, as well as implement green design into urban planning. The installation of rain gardens around schools, businesses, community centers, and homes helps offset the rush of stormwater off of impervious surfaces such as roofs, roads, and parking lots. Remember how this factory was just dumping oil and sludge directly into the river in the last version of the model? We can fix that by supporting strong environmental protection regulations and enforcement and voting with our dollar, meaning that we try to only support businesses that practice environmental stewardship. Next, we need to address the issue of animal waste. Much like how logging is necessary to produce resources we all rely on, so is agriculture. Farmers need not get rid of their livestock, but simply install fences to prevent them from walking and pooping in our waterways. Also, investing in natural barriers made of native plants along their property can help filter out the extra nutrients produced by so many animals living in one place. Similarly, all of us with a beloved furry friend at home need to be diligent about scooping the poop and throwing it away in the trash. Poop doesn't belong in the compost or recycling bins. Yet another small change we can all make is simply washing our car at a car wash or in the grass instead of the driveway. Car washes collect, filter, and recycle their water, and washing your family's car in the grass prevents all of that grime and soapy water from running down the street into a storm drain and out into our waterways. Last but not least, I'm still going to add pesticides and fertilizer in this version of the model, but I'm going to apply a lot less. There are plenty of natural, organic alternatives to traditional pesticides and fertilizers that we should all use. Only when absolutely necessary should the chemically manufactured types be used, and even then, very sparingly. Once again, it's time to make it rain. Last time, I asked you to watch how the water flowed through the watershed. In this version, I'd like you to focus on our restored wetlands and newly constructed rain gardens in order to see how well these do in filtering out pollutants present in the stormwater.
Wow, it was so interesting seeing such a drastic difference between those two scenarios. I don't know about you, but working with the Watershed Model always leaves me feeling really inspired to do whatever I can to make a difference. And speaking of making a difference, that brings me to the final part of your virtual field trip experience here at Jones Creek. Below this video on the website, you will find all of the information and resources you need in order to launch your very own stormwater pollution prevention campaign. We've seen today how even small everyday actions can add up in a big way. So let's make sure those actions are having a positive impact and ensure healthy waterways not only for us, but for all of the amazing plant and animal species that also call the Puget Sound region home. I can't wait to see what you come up with and the many ways in which you're able to inspire your family, friends, and community as a whole. Thank you in advance for all of your hard work and good luck on those campaigns.